As you mentioned, I'm going to read my notes here because I have to. Because you're very busy. Everyone's like, "Oh, you're doing one more thing." um,
Yes.
so you were working on a new UB summer program for underrepresented students, and you played a major role in organizing an anti-racism lecture program featuring activist and scholar Cornell West. So, in the midst of med school, because that's hard enough, and then you're like, I need a creative outlet. I'm also going to design shirts. You're also helping facilitate these conversations with your classmates, and you're like, two more things. I'm gonna reach out to underrepresented students, and then also organize an anti-racism program. So let's
Yeah.
start with the summer program. Where'd that come from? How did we come to this? Why did you decide to add one more thing to your plate?
Right. Um, well, I think I had the unique trust and uh, the ability and attention of the Department of Surgery to do for other students what I wish someone had done for me. And if I'm going to engage in conversations that acknowledge and are cognizant that there are structural, historic, and economic barriers for success in minority retention and matriculation in medical school, and recognize that there are historic, social, and economic barriers that feed the pipeline of minority surgeons, then we should also think about interventions that could aid in making that a little easier. If economics are one major barrier, let's think about that. If mentorship is a barrier, let's think about that. One way that we can is the summer program where you're funded, you have the ability to have a mentor. You then also get to build a CV that will add to your application to surgery and will make you a competitive applicant so that you go on to matriculate into a surgical residency and you can continue that pipeline. So I asked the incredible chair, Dr. Schweitzberg, if that was something we were willing to do, not only to talk about anti-racism, but to incorporate programs that kept that same energy. And so that was where it started. It was, if we're going to make waves and be consistent and be sincere with our hope to really fortify this pipeline, then we not only need to speak about it, but have programmatic change so that we are fulfilling this mission. And the summer program is just one component of it that I knew I could help with, because it is something that I know I did a summer program at Memorial Sloan Kettering. It was funded. It was housed in a diversity office that made sure that I was able to have mentorship, have a research project, present on that project, and it was transformative to my application to surgery. I just want to do the same, and I don't think students should have to leave to New York City to be able to do that if we have the funds and means for us to do it in Buffalo.
And tell me how the execution of that project has been going.
It's been going well. So applications are due April 1st for M1 students who would like to do the program this coming summer. Getting mentors signed up, securing the funding structure for them to be paid for the summer, getting their applications in and readers, and constructing like a program of sorts for their, I think it's going to be 8 weeks.
And tell me why, from your perspective, because I can understand why, but why, from your perspective, it is so important that we continue that pipeline of getting more surgeons, particularly surgeons of color, in,
Mhm.
and then we retain them.
Well, one, there's a truism that we've found over and over again. Diverse teams are better teams, right? That is something that is found in the business sector, in the health sector. It is a truism that is ubiquitous in every sense of the word. So we cannot be excellent if we are like homogenous. That is just one. You can't have one mindset, one background, um, one anything, and treat a diverse patient population and think you're going to execute in a way that begets better results. So that's just true across the board. I would like there to be a diversity of ethnicity, race, economic, and social status, all of the above. I would like to have a diverse team because ultimately I'm going to interact with a patient that I know nothing about their background, and it'd be really helpful for me to have a teammate or someone within the department that says, you know what, I know exactly what's going on. Thinking about Buffalo, there's a large patient population that comes from minority status, and more specifically that are Black or African American. And if there are not a sizable amount of physicians who understand that community, can connect with that community, are able to investigate their problems and disease sequelae in a way that is meaningful to that patient, then we're just not serving them well. And it is just true that there has to be more. There is not enough. It is not a representative sample of the population at the moment. It is something that should not only meet the population at minimum, but hopefully exceed that given the value that it adds. And it is just true that if you would like to better serve patients, you have to at least acknowledge that the relationship aspect of the patient-doctor encounter is a major component of it. And there's some parts of the doctor relationship that are better served from inter-community relations. In the same way that I don't speak Spanish, and a Spanish-speaking doctor may have a better connection and patient connection with a Spanish-speaking patient, and I have to acknowledge that that is something I need to have on my team, there also should be an extension of, I have to have someone who understands this community, who comes from this community, who can connect to this community and build trust in that way. So.
And the program with Dr. Cornell West. First, where did the idea come from? And then how did we get Cornell West? Was he just somebody, I know he's spoken at UB before. Did you have a hookup that we don't know about, ma'am?
I don't have a hookup, but I did meet Dr. West 2 days before I graduated from Columbia. And we took a selfie, and all the great things that happen when you meet Cornell West. He tells you he's so proud of you, and you're like, oh my God, please remember me, sir. But no, I think one, it came out of the idea that living and having a Black experience in medicine is valuable. However, what I said to the team is there are entire like books and like anthologies and scholarly work on this topic. It is not something new. It is not something that I can tell you my experience in it, and it be something that people can relate to. But this subject matter is deeply complex. It is a scholarly work that has experts in the field. It is something that has been studied over and over again. And if you're interested in an expert on activism and anti-racism, you should probably get an expert on that topic, not just a Black physician who lives through that, because that is valuable. But if I was to talk to someone about cardiac conditions, I might want to talk to a cardiologist. If I was talking to someone about COVID-19, I'd want to say, I'm going to talk to an infectious disease doctor. And for me, I think that there's sometimes a cheapening, and maybe I'm going to regret saying that. I have to probably use a different word, but sometimes when people are starting to learn about anti-racism initiatives, there's sometimes there's a propensity for people to just go and talk to people who have lived through that experience. And that is a valuable resource, but it doesn't negate that there are entire scholarly works that are dedicated to the subject matter and experts that could speak more precisely to this experience and to the work that has been done before, if you'd like to know about it. So I thought if we're going to talk about anti-racism, we should get an expert on anti-racism. And I didn't think there was anyone cooler than Cornell was. Come on.
Now I have a question. Did he remember you?
He didn't remember. Well, I don't know if he remember. I showed him the picture and he was like, oh my God. But it was like 5 minutes before we started the Zoom. And he was like, of course you were going to do, because I told him the whole story about, he told me I was going to be like, you know, someone big in the future and that he couldn't wait to see what I did in the world. And I was like, I just want to tell you really quickly that I remember this. It was such a big moment. We took a selfie and he was like, I salute you, what you're doing. I can't wait to see what you continue to do. He called me Sister Collier. And I was like, that's it for me, guys.
That's all the affirmation in the world. Like,
all the affirmation. Cornell West called me Sister Collier. I am, my time here on this earth has, you know, I'm done.
Absolutely. I'm
But
just
no,
thinking to make sure I haven't missed anything because, first of all, you've done so many wonderful things. But I highlight as many of these things as possible.
I know it's going to be a long story, girl.
It'll be fine. If there's one thing I have managed to trim down longer interviews. Don't worry. What do we have on deck? What else are we trying to accomplish? And what has the reaction been from your peers and your classmates and people in the community with all this work you're doing? Because it's a lot of work, girl.
I think to start with my classmates have known me since the beginning. So they're slightly not surprised. They're like, of course, Carol's doing this and that and this and this, because that's just been who I have shown myself to be since day one. I've always been not a busybody, but I'm not scared of work. I'm not scared of letting my passion for health equity and community like engagement damper any bit of my like medical side of things. Like they're like, yep, this makes sense. As far as the community, I think they were impressed. Part of Cornell West being not only the first person, but the like, you know, inaugural speaker was that he was a voice that centered many of what we were trying to get at. It is not the let's only think about one community. It is a centering of let's think about how we're engaging in these initiatives going forward. We will start with this one, but one thing that Cornell West does a really good job at is talking about other like concurrent minority crises. And that is something that really was going to be a great message for us going forward, because we don't want this to be the first time we talk about this issue, but we want it to be something that is funded in perpetuity, which it is funded in perpetuity. And I think many of the departments have found themselves challenged to do some work in the same manner, to look around and see how they can incorporate this into their residency programs, what conversations they can have. And I think it opened their eyes a little bit more to how special Buffalo is, in a way that, you know, people get to have bragging rights. And bragging rights are both good, but they also keep you on your toes, meaning that you want to continue to hit that bar. And so people are starting to amp up to hit that bar. And so people are saying, oh, I didn't know we had this initiative on the east side of Buffalo. What is health in the neighborhood? Who is Dr. Taylor? Who is Dr., you know, Reader Hubbard Robinson? And what are we doing with these incredible speakers? And it's like, yeah, let's ask them. Let's get the ball rolling. Because there are some incredible scholars and academics in Buffalo who are doing incredible work. And so I think the response has been, let's meet them, let's close these silos and bring people together, and let's make sure that the next time people talk about Buffalo, it's, continuing this momentum. Um, I think I answered all three.
I think you did. And I love how you mentioned Dr. Henry Taylor and
He
Rhiannon
is
Robertson.
man.
They're
She,
amazing. I love
they
them
are.
so much.
I have, I, so when you think about what's going on in the future,
Yeah.
I think they are going to be absolutely some of the speakers that we can anticipate, because the work that they put forth is, to me, contemporary with Dr. West. And I think people should very much get an opportunity to see not only how valuable they are to the Buffalo system, but also amplify just in their brilliance, and the work that they've been doing, continue to do, and will do for the Buffalo community. So I'm all about putting my community on, and I thought this was a great way to make sure it happened. No, you're
Make
fine.
sure. I didn't miss anything. Do you have to dash anywhere? Please let me know.
No, I'm just sitting upstairs. Only person that's gonna fight you for my time is my mother.
Aw, I understand
I-
that.
I'm home in Philly right now.
I figured because you mentioned here, you said here in Philly, and then you mentioned that your brother was home. I was like, oh, she must be at home.
Yes,
Speaking of, how many siblings do you have?
a lot.
A lot.
Um,
What's a lot? Because my
uh,
father was one of seven, and to me, that's a lot.
my mother is a foster care parent, so I have upwards of like 107 brothers and sisters. I'm one of biologically five.
Wow. So
Yeah,
you
my mom's like the bomb.com. I think I'm cool, but when people are like, oh my God, you work for her, I'm like, have you met my mother? No,
small pickings compared to your mother, right?
I'll pick, like, I don't know. And that's really what drives me. I'm like, my mom, I always joke that my mom is my Beyonce because she's born September 7th and, September 4th. I'm a Beyonce fan. But she's like one of the hardest working women in showbiz is Beyonce. And I feel like that same like attention to detail, like, I don't know, like unimaginable, not really human level of energy is like what my mom shows too. She's like on everything. So I'm like, oh, okay. If my mom can, do all of this, I guess I could just also make sure that I'm doing this for my community on top of being a med student.
Right. So I'm curious. I mean, obviously you're waiting to get matched, but what else is next for you? Any other big projects on the horizon we should know about?
I don't know if I can say, but I am starting to understand that even though I am at the infancy of my surgical career, I do not know operative procedure or surgical anatomy. I am starting to appreciate that I have built some level of expertise in these initiatives. And I think going forward, I want to consistently have this be part of my career. I don't know how feasible that will be in my surgical residency years, but if I have the ability to carve out some piece of that, and keep it sacred as a separate entity, that may be my next move.